Hello everybody. Today we'll be discussing about the key takeaways of Mains 2024 from the economic section. Dear friends, the key takeaway is that the paper was well within the predicted lines. All right. If you have studied your syllabus thoroughly, and if you've been regular with the newspapers, and if you have been regular with the newspapers, and if you have gone through your previous year questions from 2013 till 2024, gone through the previous year questions, as in if you have either brainstormed it or you have written answers, then this paper of the economic section is very much easy and doable. All right. So having said this, what should be the strategy for the people who are going to appear for mains next year? The strategy should be simple. The strategy should be mains as usual is more predictable than prelims, more manageable than prelims. You get less surprises in mains. Understanding my point? So what we need to do is we need to prepare our syllabus thoroughly. All right. Our preparation should be strictly restricted to the syllabus, and over it we need to add a layer of the previous year questions. We need not write all the questions. We need not write it, but at least we need to brainstorm it, and we need to have that approach as to how we can answer these questions. Apart from that, what I think is regular reading of newspapers, regular readings of newspapers is the trick of the trade. Understand one thing, a lot of questions which come in economics, especially revolve around the bigger economic debates that are happening in the country. All right. So we need to be very much well acquainted with the issues that are happening in the past one year or so. Understanding my point? So these are the three things which we need to have in our mind, which we need to keep in our mind as we go forward. All right. So let us try to discuss the broader way as to how we could have approached these answers. All right. So the first question is, examine the pattern and trend of public expenditure on social services in the post-reform period. In India, to what extent this has been in consonance with achieving the objective of inclusive growth. Understand, dear friends, that every year, almost every year, there is going to be a question on inclusive growth. It's a very, very important topic. Now, having understood the importance of inclusive growth, we need to understand that this question demands certain things. First of all, if we rephrase this question talks about how and what are the initiatives and what are the attempts made by the government to attain this ideal of inclusive growth. Now, to answer this, we need to understand what inclusive growth is. I'm not giving you a model answer here, but I'm going to discuss about the various issues on which we could have touched upon in this answer. First of all, as we know that inclusive growth comes from a concept, comes from the realization that mere growth is not going to help change the lives of a lot of sections in the society. There are certain excluded sections in the society who require special attention, so that they can come back to the mainstream of the society and reap the benefits of growth. From here emerges the concept of inclusive growth. Inclusive growth simply means that the benefits, the fruits of the growth has to be shared among all the sections of the society. And basically, I have told in my revision class also that there are 4 dimensions of exclusion in India. The first dimension of exclusion in India is caste. Second dimension of exclusion is class. Third dimension of exclusion is the region, that is urban and rural, this thing. And the fourth dimension of exclusion is gender. These 4 dimensions of exclusion has to be addressed for our growth to be inclusive. And we have already seen in the revision classes, and also we know that there are certain features of inclusive growth. Features of inclusive growth include employment. Features of inclusive growth include eradication or alleviation of poverty. Features of inclusive growth include reduction of regional disparities. Features of inclusive growth include provision of basic amenities which lead to improved standard of living of people. Now, how has the government directed its expenditure to attain this lofty ideal of inclusive growth was the question here. All right. So let us just take a quick reading as to what this question said and what could be the approach we could have. First of all, we could have defined this with what inclusive growth meant. All right, we need not know the exact figures of public expenditure, but we need to know the broader trends, whether the public expenditure post-reform period was increasing or not. Because understand one thing, there is an allegation that the liberalism, the neoliberalism, that means the rolling back of the state, has led to the reduction of public expenditure on public services, causing exacerbation of inequality. All right, that is the direction of the question. So we need to understand what is inclusive growth. Inclusive growth is an economic growth that delivers social benefits, tackles inequalities, spreads benefits more fairly between people and places. Understand one thing, specifically when we are writing answers with respect to Indian context, we need to always specify the 4 dimensions of exclusivity in India. Again, I repeat, the 4 dimensions of exclusion in India are gender, caste, class and region. All right, so it is a process and outcome where all groups of people have participated in the process of growth and benefited equitably from it. All right, and then there are certain elements of inclusive growth. We need to know these elements of inclusive growth thoroughly so that we can maneuver our answer as per the requirements of the question. So what are the elements of inclusive growth? Understand one thing, a growth will be called inclusive only if it leads to poverty reduction. You cannot call the growth to be inclusive if it does not lead to reduction in poverty. A growth can only be called inclusive when there is equitable distribution of income. You cannot call growth to be inclusive when there is increasing inequality along with increasing growth. You cannot call growth to be inclusive until and unless there is social sector development. Understand that there are certain sections of the society who have been deprived and who are away from the mainstream, who are not into the mainstream. Until and unless social sector development takes place, through which they can enter back into the mainstream, you cannot call such growth to be inclusive growth. You cannot call growth inclusive until and unless that growth leads to reduction in regional disparities rather than exacerbating the regional disparities. You cannot call a growth inclusive until and unless growth leads to industrial development, because understand, India faces a problem of disguised unemployment. To absorb this additional labor, whose marginal productivity is almost zero, India has to promote industrial development. So industrial development, inclusive growth cannot be achieved without industrial development. We cannot call a growth to be inclusive if it is deteriorating environment. We cannot call inclusive growth without employment generation. This is the jugular vein of Indian economics. Understand one thing, employment generation solves a lot of problems for India. Understanding my point, it solves the problem of poverty. It solves the problem of dignity. It solves the problem of hopelessness in Indian economy. So we need to tackle the problem of employment for our growth to be inclusive. Understanding my point? Having understood the elements of inclusive growth, we need to understand as to how has the government spending in these sectors led to the improvement in the conditions. Whether government spending in the previous years has led to agricultural development, poverty reduction, equitable distribution, social sector development, reduction in regional disparities, protection of environment, etc., etc. Has the government expenditure led to the reduction of these, betterment of these conditions, inevitably or indirectly achieving inclusive growth or not is the question. So let us look here. So first of all, what are social services? It is just, I have given you so that you can understand what social services means. Basically, social services are those services which we give for people who are outside the mainstream or people who are excluded. It includes unemployment assistance, it includes social housing facilities, it includes childcare, it includes health, public education, etc., etc. All right, you can go through it. Next, we need to understand the trends. We need not know the exact figures, we just need to know the trends, whether the provision of public services, the expenditure for the provision of public services is broadly increasing or decreasing. So from 1991 to 2000, it was around 5 to 6% of GDP. All right, and it is increasing. So the broader trend is that the expenditure is increasing. Public expenditure on provisioning public services is increasing. All right, now we can see that how has we clocked on these parameters. Now India has registered a significant decline in multidimensional poverty. So we can call on some parameters that our growth is inclusive, on some parameters our growth is not inclusive. On what parameters and why do we call that India's growth is an growth of an inclusive story? Why is it? Because we were successfully able to bring a lot of people out of poverty. And poverty, not just absolute poverty, I'm talking about multidimensional poverty, which encompasses not just income poverty, but also encompasses other sorts of poverties like poverty with respect to access to education, access to health, affordability, etc. So, India has registered a significant decline in multidimensional poverty from 29.17% in 2013 to 2014 to 11.28% in 2022 to 2023. That is, we have attained a reduction of 17.89 percentage points. 415 million people we were successfully able to bring them out of poverty. So that is a tremendous job which we have done. So that is the parameter as to why I can call that India's growth is inclusive. Understanding my point, I know that figures like this, data facts, it is difficult to remember. But you need to understand that whenever you are thorough with the syllabus, as to what each and every, if you know the heading of the syllabus, if you are memorize the syllabus, while you read your newspapers throughout your journey, you will get a lot of data points which you can use, which you can memorize to corroborate your answers in a better manner. Understanding my point? So I can say that India's growth is an inclusive growth story because we were successful in lifting 415 million people out of poverty. I can also say that India's growth is a story of inclusive growth because my overall literacy has risen. Understanding my point? So you can see that from 1991 to 2022, my overall literacy has risen from 14.22% to 59.28%, sorry, 76.32%. This includes rise of education levels of both male and females. Understanding my point? Female education at that point of time was 33.75%. 73%, right now it is 69.11% at 2022. This shows that India's story of growth is a story of inclusive growth because of the increased literacy rates of all the sections of the society, including women. Understanding my point? So that is why I can say that India's growth story is inclusive growth, and this was attained because of a lot of initiatives the government has taken. For example, the Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan, Right to Education Act, etc. Understanding my point? Even eradication of poverty was successful because of a lot of schemes that the government has brought in. For example, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the National Food Security Act, etc., etc. So, National Health Mission, etc. So, all these schemes were very much important for India to attain the dimension of inclusivity in its growth. Understanding my point? Apart from that, we can also corroborate our answer based on certain parameters or certain factors regarding health. Now, when I talk about health, I can say my inclusive growth, the growth of India is inclusive because of the fact that India is performing well on the parameter of health. And how do I say that? This is corroborated by the National Family Health Survey 5 report, and it talks about the total fertility rate. Underage marriages have come down, teenage pregnancies have come down, institutional births have improved, immunization level has improved, stunting has come down. All right. Because of this, I can say that because the growth has led to improvement in health outcomes, I can call my growth as inclusive growth. I can also call my growth as inclusive growth because I am very much in a position to say that in the previous surveys, like that is the periodic labor force surveys, that the unemployment rate in India is declining. So because of all these factors as to how my growth was successfully able I am calling my India's growth story as inclusive growth story because India lifted many people from multidimensional poverty. India was able to provide education to a lot of people. India was able to provide employment to a lot of people. India was able to provide better health facilities, which is reflected in the better outcomes corroborated by the National Family Health Survey National Family Health Survey 5. All right, all these things, and also regional disparities. Public expenditures has been directed to reduce regional disparities, like Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Several initiatives like aspirational district programs were launched, and affirmative actions constitutionally affirming certain regions of the regions of country were launched. For example, the Article 371J, which provides which basically talks about the development of the Uttar Karnataka region of Karnataka, that is the Hyderabad Karnataka region. Now it is called as the Kalyana Karnataka region of Karnataka, of establishing a separate board, providing reservation in employment as well as education. All these measures were very much helpful in tackling the regional disparities. So these are various points which I could have used. Even if I don't know the exact data points, I could have used these parameters on which I could have justified the fact that my growth is not exclusive, rather inclusive. But also understand that India, this is not a complete picture. India still needs to go a long way. And how should I say that India should still go a long way? Inequality is increasing. Understand one thing. Income and wealth inequality in India is rising, and it is at the historic high. So you cannot call India's growth to be inclusive because inequality in India is rising. All right. Understand one thing, the World Inequality Report. You will be reading a lot of reports throughout your preparation. Make sure that any report which is related to the syllabus, directly or indirectly, make a note of it, skim a data point from it, which you can use it in your mains. All right. Now, India is among the most unequal countries in the world, with top 10% and top 1% of the population holding 57% and 22% of the total national income respectively. Understand, wealth gives you a distilled opportunity. All right. Wealth gives you opportunity like none other. Understanding my point? So whenever I talk about concentration of wealth, I should also talk about concentration of opportunities to a few sections of society. Understand, there are various authors, various philosophers who are talking about, economists like Joseph Stiglitz, philosophers like Joseph Yuval Noah Harari. So they talk about how increasing inequality in the future can overlap with the inventions in biotechnology, genetic engineering, as a result of which we are staring at a possibility of eugenics, all right, wherein we can the rich can artificially manipulate their genes to become more superior. Understanding my point? So these are various interesting dimensions which are playing out. But you need to understand that India's growth story cannot be completely called as an inclusive growth story, because inequality is increasing in India. Second, of course, yes, I'm talking about the fact that India's employment rate is increasing, but you need to also understand that the labor force participation of India is not up to the mark. Point number one. Second thing is, you need to understand that it is not enough for India to create jobs. India should create jobs along with the fact that India should create quality jobs. And quality jobs, when I say quality of job, I talk about wages, I talk about social security, I talk about the better working conditions which are not prohibitive or exploitative, etc. Understanding my point? So quality of employment creation in India is not up to the mark. Understand one thing, informalization in India is increasing. So, and especially with the emergence of gig workers, we need to think about various ways in which we can protect them. Understanding my point? So the quality of employment is not up to the mark. And combine this with the fact that there's a fourth industrial revolution. We are talking about generative AI. Now, generative AI has the capacity to replace repetitive jobs which are not very much high skilled. Understanding my point? So this has the potential to entirely disrupt the employment market. So we need to address these challenges for India's growth to be a inclusive one. We also need to talk about, still India houses one of the largest poors in the world. Poverty is a reality in India even today. So that is why I cannot say. And further that, we are talking about nutritional poverty. Basically, we have ample number of surveys which talk about the fact that India's population is anemic, obesity is increasing. This further will lead to increase in non-communicable diseases, cognitive impairment, etc. Apart from that, the quality of education is also, education is also a question here. Understand one thing, it's not just about increasing literacy, it's also about increasing the skills, the foundational skills. All right, we have been launching a lot of programs to improve the quality of the skill set of our children. But time and again, surveys of like ESSER has shown that India's children are not able to are not very much strong in their foundational skills. All right, maths, reading, foundational literacy, etc. So these are the challenges which remain today. Now, I have not strictly not restricted my discussion to the question here, because This discussion should also help people who are going to write their mains exam next year. It should give them perspective as well as directions as to how they're going to prepare their economics part of GS3. All right, so that is why my intention here is not just to give you model answers, but also to make sure that I stir your direction, your thought in a particular direction, wherein you can think and prepare in a particular direction, wherein which can help you in the upcoming exam. All right. So second thing is, we need to understand that a lot had been written this year about food inflation. All right. Now, food inflation has become a major problem in India. It has been a major problem in India, and the question on food inflation has come up. Now, what are the causes of persistent food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. Understand one thing. I always tell to my students that to measure the health of the economy, we need certain parameters. Just like the fact that to measure the health of a person, if I want to get a fair idea as to whether this person is healthy or not, what do I do? Just give me a second. What do I do? I measure various parameters which indicate his health, like for example, his temperature, his blood pressure, his glucose levels, his SpO2 levels, etc. Similarly, there are various parameters which indicate the macroeconomic health of the country. The macroeconomic health of the country basically is indicated by GDP. It is indicated by employment. It is indicated by price stability or inflation. It is indicated by the twin deficits of current account deficit and fiscal deficit. It is indicated by other measures like imports and exports, etc. So basically, these are the three measures which indicate the macroeconomic health of the country. If GDP is growing, if employment numbers are increasing, quality employment is increasing, and price stability is there in an economy, that means we are performing very well macroeconomically. So these are certain parameters which you need to know by heart. Whenever you enter your exam hall, may it be prelims or mains, data related to GDP, data related to employment, data related to inflation, and need not be precise data, but we need to know that whether inflation is increasing or not. Inflation, we measure inflation through various parameters, from various perspectives, like the producer price index, of course, which is not measured in India, but the wholesale price index, consumer price index, whether food inflation is increasing or not, whether which sector is causing, which is putting strain on the price stability. All these things should be known before entering the exam. All right. Along with that, the current account deficit, the fiscal deficit, imports and export. These are the data which you need to be having on the tip of your tongues on the whenever you are going to write your exam, because these comes in handy for corroboration of the facts. All right, and you can assert your point in a very convincing manner to the examiner. All right, so inflation is a very important parameter to measure the macroeconomic health. Now, understand one thing. Why am I telling this? That whenever you prepare, when you say that you are the student of economics, you need to know this data. All right, so that is why so next time when you prepare, make sure that at least these parameters which broadly indicate the macroeconomic health of the country should be known by you. All right, so now I'm talking about this question. What are the persistent causes? What are the causes for persistent high food inflation? Look here. Food inflation in India averaged around 6.09% from 2012 until 2024. Now, the accepted levels of inflation is 2 to 6%, right? That is 4 plus or minus 2%. All right, this is the inflation levels which the Monetary Policy Committee targets. All right, but of course, we were in a better position for most of the time to have an inflation within this bracket, but our food inflation exceeded it. All right, and it has also reached at an all-time high of 14.72%. This is the data which simply indicates that India suffers from a problem of food inflation. All right, now let us try to unveil or unpack as to why India suffers food inflation. Now, understand one thing. Whenever I'd say inflation is basically caused when there is a mismatch between the demand and supply. If there is a mismatch between the demand and supply, this is a recipe for inflation. Now, let us understand why is So for inflation to for inflation to occur, the demand should increase and the supply should decrease. If either of the things happen, then there will be a short inflation. Now understand one thing, systematically framing the answer in this way will give you points in a very logical and an organic manner. Understanding my point? So let us look into the demand factors. So demand factors here is increasing population, increasing per capita income and standard of living due to rising disposable incomes. All right. Now, population increase automatically leads to increase in food grain demand for food grains, and increasing demand will cause inflation. Second, increasing per capita income. Look, understand one thing. As per capita income, the demand for nutritional, that is the demand for protein-based foods is going to increase. Dairy products, it's going to increase. So this is going to have a fallout of increasing prices in the economy. So these are the two demand and factors which I can list off, which have increasing what? This thing. Understand one thing. Food grains, we have inflation here. Not a lot, but we have vegetables like tomatoes, onion, potatoes, dairy product and pulses. All these are, and especially the perishables, the inflation of perishables in India is more. And why is it? Because of increasing population and increasing per capita income. Now let us look into the supply side factors. There are a lot of factors which prevent the regular optimum supply of food grains, vegetables, perishables and dairy products. And what are those factors? Let us look into them one by one. First of all, our agriculture is majorly dependent on monsoon. And understand one thing, and monsoon in India is very much uneven, basically concentrated in the 4 months. Most of the monsoon is concentrated in 4 months. And nowadays, with the problem of climate change has exacerbated the untimely and uneven rains which India is getting. Understand one thing, whenever there is a phenomenon of El Nino, La Nina, all right, this have the capacity to either reduce the supply or increase the supply to a very high level. So because of this, what happens is the supply of food grains, the supply of perishables, all this is going to. And second thing is climate change also has the capacity to increase the pest attacks. All right. So because of which again there would be a crop loss, and crop loss leads to reduced supply, and this would lead to increased inflation. So climate change is going to make things worse. Understanding my point? Now, apart from that, we have certain systemic issues, structural issues like poor storage and transportation facilities and infrastructure, which leads to a lot of wastage, reducing the supply. All right, especially for perishable goods like fruits and vegetables. Rising prices, that is rising input costs. All right, Indian farmer is suffering because his input cost is rising, and this input cost will inevitably translate to higher food inflation. Rising prices of fertilizer, seeds, pesticides, fuel for irrigation increases production costs which are transferred to consumers. Government policies. Now, when I talk about government policies, I am talking about the skewed policy of announcing MSPs. Now, basically, mostly the rice and the wheat system is promoted in India because of the government policy. Now, because of this, the area under rice and wheat cultivation has increased. The area under pulses, oil seeds has come down. Now, when the area under pulses and oil seeds comes down, the production of pulses and oil seeds comes down. When the production of pulses and oil seeds comes down, I'm talking of less supply, as a result of which of increase, we can expect increased prices. Apart from that, we have also talked about seasonality. Fruits, vegetables suffer from the problem of seasonality. They grow in a particular season. Their supply is very good in that particular season. After that, their supply drops. So seasonality is also a problem. Apart from that, global price fluctuations, and understand global events like the Ukraine war have the tendency to increase food prices, because we have seen the increase in let's say the price of wheat. All right, because global events, catastrophic events, have the tendency to cause supply disruptions. All right, we also have seen that during COVID, the palm oil prices had increased in India because of the supply side disruptions. All right, so global events have the tendency to increase food inflation in India. Climate change, of course, I've told. Hoarding and speculation, yes, hoarding and speculation, and the supply side disruptions. So these are the factors you can list which are the major reasons for food inflation in India. Now, there is a second part of the question which talks about the effectiveness of RBI's policy. Understand one thing, RBI's policy is basically to tackle the demand side of inflation, Now, we need to understand that RBI's monetary policy either increases or decreases the money supply, thereby increasing or decreasing the demand side of it. But understand one thing, in food inflation in India is not majorly because of demand, but food inflation in India is majorly because of what? Supply. So, supply side factors. RBI through its monetary policy cannot control rains. Can RBI through its monetary policy control rains? It cannot. So, that's what I am trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you that RBI's policy has a limited impact because most of the food inflation is driven by the supply side factors. And RBI's policy is very much well when it comes to demand side factors. So, RBI's policy can tackle demand side inflation, but not the supply side inflation. So, it has a limited impact. But however, RBI through its qualitative measures can increase more lending to agriculture, which can reduce the input cost because credit is also one of the inputs. So, that can be done, but the effectiveness of RBI's policy is limited. Now, this completes the question, but I would like to extend the discussion to this fact. Now, how do you tackle food inflation? First of all, increase the productivity. Now, increasing agricultural productivity itself is a question. Alright. Now, how do you increase agricultural productivity? Whenever you want to increase agricultural productivity, look at it from all the inputs of agriculture. Alright. And make sure that they become more efficient. Alright. Increased agricultural productivity you can increase agricultural productivity by better implements, using better inputs, all right, by land consolidation because it brings in economies of scale. So, all these things can improve agricultural productivity. When agricultural productivity increases, then the yield available in the market also increases. The yield available in the market increasing means the supply of that particular food grain increases in the economy, thereby reducing the price. Second, strengthening the food supply chains. Now, the problem here is this. In India, what is happening is we have a fragmented market, a distorted market. We need to strengthen the food supply. Our infrastructure, storage and transportation infrastructure should be well dealt. And then promoting trade and market integration. Yes. And then promoting competition, reduce monopoly and power. All right. So, these are the way forwards. Now, this is not within the scope of the exam, but you need to understand that every sentence which I have given here is a question in itself. Alright, so make sure that you go through it. Next, what are the factors responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of the country? Now, this question has been asked many times. The same question, it's like the old wine in the new bottle. Alright, land reforms are very much important. That has been one of the ideal which our Indian national movement strived for, because we understood that skewed distribution of land was the source of many problems in India. All right. So, land reforms, it is specifically mentioned in your syllabus, and almost every year, there is going to be a question on land reforms. Why land reforms has been successful in some parts, and why land reforms has not been successful in other parts. Now, this is hardly a 5 to 6 pager syllabus. Once you go through it, try to list out the success stories and why. Alright, I have just broadly given you the idea. First of all, it was successful in some states like West Bengal and Kerala because of political will. You can add Karnataka also here to some extent. Then there were certain states who had implemented laws with very less loopholes, administrative reasons, awareness, mass movements, like the Telangana. In Telangana, we have the movement of the peasants, awareness, and then cooperative movement like Gujarat. So, these were the things which were successful. Now, this is not a very analytical question, a very theory-based question. So, I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. All right. So, next we'll talk about role of millets for ensuring nutritional security. Now, I told you that major economic debates in the economy are going to be a point in the exam. Why? Look here. In 2023, we had the International Year for Millets. Look, the same question had come in IFOS last year. IFOS 2023 IFOS November, we had a paper of GS. There was the same question, related question about millets. Now, understand, if you read your newspapers regularly, you would have encountered articles on millets innumerable times. All right. I don't even have to tell you whether it is important or not. You don't even have to prepare separately for questions like this. Just read the newspaper, you'll be done. I am particularly emphasizing, see, the utility of this class is not just discussing here, to give you an approach as to how you are going to maneuver or how you are going to orient your preparation. Understanding my point? So there are few things which you have to do, and those are simple things which you have to do, and that will automatically orient your preparation in line or in consonance with the exam. All right. So millets, this was expected. This was asked also last time in IFOS GS. All right. So just look here. So 2023 was declared as the International Year of Millets. The aim of International Year. Why? Why did we declare? Why does United Nations declare a particular year for this thing? Because to spread awareness, to emphasize on the utility and the functionality of a particular topic. So for example, if United Nations declares a particular year to be a year of sanitation or plastic free, whatever it is declaring with an intention that, first of all, that topic is important for humanity. Second, it wants to create awareness. Why it wants to create awareness? Because it is very much important, especially with humanity, sustainability, etc. So basically, it wanted to create awareness about the health benefits. And understand one thing, here only health and nutritional security it is asked. Understand one thing, millets have to be cultivated not just for human health, but also health of the soil, climate change, health of the soil ecosystem or biodiversity. We should not talk about it. We should talk about human health. We can mention 1 or 2 points about other benefits. One point listing all other benefits, but primarily our focus should be on health benefits. Understanding my point? Now, India is the world. So, millets are called as nutri-cereals or Sri Anna. They have dietary fiber, good quality fat, essential minerals or nutrition, vitamins and all. Nutritionally superior to most of the consumption basket of our modern consumption basket is filled by rice and wheat basically. It is much more healthier than that. Alright, India is the world's largest producer of millets and a vital source of nutrients for millions of Indians. Some of the millets grown in India include, I've just given you the millet map of India. Alright, you can just go through this map. These different types of millets. These are different types of millets. Alright, in different parts of the country, different types of millets are grown. Alright, just go through them. Alright, now, how is it helping Indian? So why nutritional security is important to India? Now, India has played a very important role for the declaration of that particular year, that is International Year of Millets. Why? Because it is helping us nutritionally secure. And why India needs nutritional security? We need to understand that. India needs nutritional security because India suffers from all of these. Alright, and most of them are related to our consumption habits, our dietary habits. Alright, our consumption basket is overtly skewed in the direction of rice and wheat. Alright, we do not have a lot of fruits in our consumption basket. We do not have a lot of components which fulfill our micronutrient requirements. Alright, because of all this, we are suffering from problems like wasting, stunting, underweight. These all things you might have known. Now, what is wasting? Wasting is low weight for height. Height is there, weight is not there. This is wasting. Stunting is he looks short. That means low height for age. And then underweight. Most of us suffer from vitamin A deficiency, vitamin D, iron, iodine deficiency. Obesity has become a major problem. Again, because our dietary, our consumption basket is skewed in terms of a particular this thing. Alright, I've given you this slide, so you can just go through it. Alright. Now, Global Hunger Index, this is the trend. Now, National Family Health Survey specifically emphasizes on the need that there is a prevalence of malnutrition in India. There is a prevalence of anemia in India. There is a prevalence, and other reports have also highlighted that India suffers from nutritional insecurity. Now, because India suffers from nutritional problems, we need a solution. And the solution to this problem of nutrition in India can be millets. Millets are seen as a solution to this problem. So that is why this question. Understanding my point? So why? Because it is rich in essential nutrients like calcium, iron, zinc, vitamin B. For example, ragi, which is grown in Karnataka also. It's also called as finger millet, is rich in calcium, supporting bone health, especially in children and the elderly. Sorghum or jawar, it is grown in my part of the world, that is North Karnataka, Kalyana Karnataka region, we eat jawar. Alright, it is rich in iron, helps in combat anemia in rural areas where iron deficiency is prevalent. Millets are gluten free, alright, have low glycemic index, alright. So because of all these reasons, they are protein rich, they are a good source of protein, good and cheap source of protein, they are affordable and drought resistance and accessible. Alright, so these are the reasons as to why you can see that millets has to be promoted. Discuss the merits and demerits of the 4 labor codes. Now, understand one thing. I'll just give you the context as to how this discussion has emerged and why this thing. Now, what are the factors of production? Land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Factors of production. Now, these factor reforms are very essential for India to take off. India cannot think of becoming a Viksit Bharat without proper factor reforms. So, we need to have reforms in land. What should be the way forward? It is very important. We need to know about it. We need to have reforms in labor. We need to have other ease of doing business things so that our economy grows. Now, land reforms, past is also important, and what are the future land reforms India should expect is very important. Our direction, because even today, a lot of infrastructure projects are stalled because the land acquisition in India is a problem. So, we need to focus on them and labor for. This will increase the total factor productivity, something called as TFP. Reforms will improve the total factor productivity, which will unleash the animal spirits of Indian economy. For Indian economy to grow, India to become Viksit Bharat, Indian economy should grow. For Indian economy to grow, we need to undertake certain structural reforms. And one of the structural reforms is the labor reforms. We have already undertaken it. We have actually consolidated the various and innumerable and confusing labor laws into 4 labor codes. And a question was expected, and this time we had a question on them. Alright, it was a fairly easy question. Alright, so I will just go through as to what this is. I have given you the slide, you can go through it. Alright, the second National Commission on Labour, constituted in 2002, we had a lot of labor laws, alright, which were confusing and archaic provisions and inconsistent definitions. To improve the ease of compliance and ensure uniformity in labor laws, the National Commission on Labour recommended the consolidation of central laws into 4 broader groups, such as one code deals with industrial relations, one labor code talks about wages, one labor code talks about social security and safety, one labor code talks about working conditions and welfare. So, 4 bills on labor codes were passed, which consolidated 29 central laws. 29 central laws. These were consolidated into one code was a code on wages, one code was a code on industrial relations, one code was a code on social security, and one code was a code on occupational safety, health and working conditions. Alright, now, why? The question was merits and demerits of the 4 labor codes. So, basically let us look into the merits of it. Central government proposed to replace 29 labor codes with 4 codes. Basically, what did it do? It was simplification. Now, simplifying the labor codes would improve the ease of doing business. Improve the ease of doing business will help in improved hiring and employment opportunities. So, that is why this labor codes very important. Apart from that, you need to understand that the major challenge in labor reforms is to facilitate employment. what should a labor law basically want to attain? It should make sure that the hiring is easy, it is not restrictive or prohibitive. At the same time, it should not compromise on the working conditions, on the welfare of the labor. All right. So that is the major challenge. So key debates as to key debate relating to the coverage of the firm, deciding the thresholds for prior permissions of retrenchment, strengthening labor enforcement, allowing flexible forms of labor, and promoting collective bargaining. Further, with the passage of time, labor laws needs an overhaul to ensure simplification and adaptation, along with provisions which can capture the needs of emerging forms of labor like gig worker. This note discusses these challenges and approaches taken by the 4 keywords. All right, first is coverage. So I have specifically, we have listed out the different aspects of labor, this thing, as to why they are very much important. You can just look into the slide. There's nothing much which I have to explain here or analyze here. From this, we need to take one thing, that any laws which are passed, any laws or any acts which are passed, they automatically become important not just to your prelims but also to your mains. Understanding my point? So any law, so for the laws which are passed for the 2 years, all right, the important legislations of, for example, if I'm preparing for 2025, important legislations from 2024, 2025 has to be thorough. All right. Now, that is the takeaway from here, from this point. All right. Once you do that, you would have read in your article so many times about this that you need to prepare specifically for this. If you have been regular with your preparation, you automatically know. All right. So I've listed it out. You can just go through it. All right. And these are the demerits. These are the demerits. All right. Next, what are the major challenges faced by irrigation system in recent times? State the measures taken by the government for efficient irrigation management. Now, I have listed some data points. India has 17% of the world population and 12.4% of the land. 17% of world's population, 2.4% of land, and 4% of water resources. So India is basically a water stressed country. All right. So when India has less water, more population to depend on it, managing water becomes a very important challenge. It is a big challenge, managing water resources, and managing water resources becomes a big challenge. And most of the water, fresh water in India, is used for the purpose of irrigation. So irrigation, proper implementation of efficient irrigation system is the need of the hour, because it directly has a lot to do with water security. All right. So irrigation is the main consumer of fresh water, and more than 90% of the groundwater draft in India is consumed for irrigation. Growing population coupled with food security has put extra pressure on water resources. Net irrigated area of India has increased from nearly 18% to 48% in the recent times due to government interventions at various levels. Net irrigated area of India has increased, all right, from 18 to 48% in the recent times because of various government initiatives. So we have been successful in increasing the area under irrigation. But what are the challenges of Indian irrigation system? First of all, one of the major challenges of Indian irrigation system is depleting water table, because we are over relying on what? We are over relying on groundwater resources. And because of our faulty cropping system. You need to understand that we are growing crops which consume a lot of water. They are water guzzlers. Because of this, and there is subsidized electricity given. So all these three are leading to something called as groundwater depletion. We are growing crops which need a lot of water. Second, which need a lot of water, and we are sourcing this water from groundwater. We were sourcing it easily because of subsidized electricity or subsidized diesel for farmers. So this trio is causing what? The depletion of water table, and this is a very dangerous trend. The canal irrigated area has decreased by 38 lakh hectare. We are not going for canal irrigation because groundwater irrigation is more convenient, and it is also become cheap because of the subsidy provided by the government. All this is leading to something called as groundwater depletion. All right. Now, second is uneven distribution of rainfall. This is a major challenge in India. Fourth is poor irrigation efficiency. We are using more water to produce yield. All right. The same amount of yield can be produced by using less water, And this can be produced by using water saving technologies like micro irrigation. So this is a major problem. Poor irrigation efficiency has become a major problem. Apart from that, there is a huge and increasing gap between irrigation potential created and irrigation potential utilized. We have created a lot of irrigation potential, but utilization has less. Utilization is less. So there is a very much gap. There is a very huge gap. And why is it? Because of lack of on-farm works like construction of field channels, land leveling or shaping and adoption of the Varabandi system, and finally the time taken by the farmers in switching over the new cropping patterns, that is from dry land farming to irrigated farm. What are the measures taken? Various schemes were launched by the central government, like Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, alright, which promote micro irrigation. It basically gives subsidies for micro irrigation. This thing, Jal Shakti Abhiyan, participatory irrigation management, subsidy to improve water irrigation systems, and then water management organizations like Central Water Commission were formed, Central Groundwater Board and management was formed. Understand one thing. Irrigation is very important for your prelims also, and the bodies related to irrigation are also important. Alright. So this completes your discussion on economics. Alright. And I would emphasize the intent of the class was to orient the preparation of the people who are preparing for the next year. Alright. Your preparation, I would emphasize that should be focusing around the syllabus. Strictly it should be restricted to the syllabus. Have a one-page notes on all the pointers in the syllabus. This is the biggest gift you can give it to yourself. Second, with the syllabus and the notes, add the second layer, that is from 2013 to 2024. Even if you cannot do this, at least do the past 6 years to 5 to 6 years previous year questions. Alright, look as to how the questions were asked in each topic. Third is the current affairs. Don't rely on monthly compilations. Rely on them, they are a very good source of revision, but I would suggest you to read your newspapers daily. Especially the opinion page for mains is very, very important. Opinion page or editorial page in mains is for mains in the newspaper is very, very important. Most of the questions in the mains will feature around the big economic questions or the debates which have captured the imagination of the policymakers in the previous 1 year. Understanding my point? So this should be the approach. Syllabus, make a one-page notes from the syllabus. Add a layer to it of the previous year mains questions and current affairs. I would emphasize again that mains is more predictable. Predictability in mains makes mains more easier than prelims. Prelims sometimes can get eccentric, unpredictable. But mains is predictable. That is why take a very systematic approach to your studies. Keep it simple. Don't complicate things. Understanding? Don't read it from multiple notes, because ultimately you have to make a one-page notes. Read 100 books, make a one-page note. Read one book, make a one-page note. Ultimately what is going to be your friend is that one-page notes of every word in the syllabus. Understanding my point? So limit your sources. Alright. Second is, don't ignore previous year questions. Brainstorm them. You need not write them. If you can't write them, it's okay, I understand, but at least brainstorm them. Have an approach to what you are going to write for the previous year questions. These are mines. Understanding my point? These are gold mines. Don't miss it out. Next, current affairs. I don't have words to emphasize the significance and importance of current affairs. Understand one thing, enmesh yourself with the discussions that are happening around. Understanding my point? And how do you do it? How do you become a part of this discussion? By reading opinion pages and editorials seriously every day. Everybody knows this. I know everybody knows this. The point is how you are going, whether you are going to do it or not, is going to decide whether you are going to be in the list or out of the list. Understand? Take things seriously. I tell you that it is not the most intelligent who clears this exam. It is the one who is the most consistent who clears this exam. Understanding my point? So make sure that you try to do this well and try to attain excellence in what you do. All right, understanding my point? Thank you.